Hey, good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening, a very wet Tuesday evening. Just like to say welcome to everyone this evening. Let me just get this up. Yeah, this not too sure what's happening with the weather. I'm not even too sure the weather people do, but anyway, it is what it is. I'd just like to say welcome to you Tuesday evening, and those watching catch up local and abroad. Just say a huge welcome. Oh, thank you, sound engineer, brilliant. You're on it. I'm not too sure what's happening with Facebook, but certainly have a look if that's happening there as well. So we're continuing with this whole thing around moral injury. If you're here for the first time, I want to say welcome. My name is Delroy Hall. I'm a trained psychotherapist, trainer, and lecturer and teacher. And I've been looking at moral injury now, the impact of moral injury, for nearly 4 months now. So the kind of pattern is I write a newsletter, and then the broadcast is a deep dive into the newsletter. So you'll find everything on LinkedIn. I spend 3-4 weeks on a topic. I think now I'm entering the 4th month, or maybe just coming out of the 4th month, looking at this huge topic. So just to say welcome. I'd like to begin with a quote, and then I'll just give a definition of moral injury. A quote: "The secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny is keeping them ignorant." And one of the things I want to do is to educate people, hints and tips with psychological and psychotherapeutic insights to help people avert crisis. But I must emphasize, this is no substitute for you going to see your GP, your psychologist, or counselor to really kind of get the work done. So for those of you that may be watching, let me just, for those who may be here for the first time, I just want to say a little bit about moral injury. So let me just put it a sentence at a time. Oh, where are we? Okay, let me just get it up. Let's have a look. Here we go. Okay, so moral injury is an injury to one's values or conscience when a person has witnessed, perpetrated, or failed to prevent an act that compromises the person's values and morals. In other words, it is what happens when you participate in, either directly or indirectly, something totally awful and evil. And finally, something that goes against everything you believe in and you do nothing to stop it. This contradicts your own values. It's so impactful that it becomes its own form of trauma. So this whole thing around moral injury, and I'm talking about moral injury in the workplace. It had its origins in the Vietnamese returnees. And then we had insights of during the pandemic, where you had nurses and medical staff wanting to treat people. They signed up for the health service to look after people, and then they weren't able to do so. And then that was kind of moral injury. And then in the workplace, it's lots of companies now have whistleblowing policies. But then if you do see something, you say something, life becomes very, very difficult for you. So that's what I'm really focusing on, really, in the workplace. So for me, there's something obscene about people being kept silence, or there's this energy to kind of silence individuals. There are times that we have to be confidential. That's true. There's time we have to be silent. But when you want to sound the alarm because something is wrong, unprofessional, unethical, for me, it is damaging and it is wrong. And that environment is not a psychologically safe place. So we'll be looking at the birth of the NDAs, how they are, the development of the NDAs started off with, so for example, I'm a farmer, you're a farmer, we need to do something together, and it started off with, when we shook hands, the word was our bond. And then you had a time period where people, men, usually men, always men, building castles and large cathedrals, and they kept secrets, trade secrets, within the kind of community of masons and people who worked on these buildings, and certainly tradespeople. And then two significant things happened. There was the decline of building castles and cathedrals, and then you had the Industrial Revolution, around about 1760, whereby things started to change from my word is my bond. Money became involved, profit. So then there were kind of formal agreements between individuals and companies. So that kind of carried on for quite some time. And then around about the 1940s, you see the kind of NDA begin to kind of the non-disclosure agreement, a legal contract beginning to emerge during the 1940s. And then they really come into their own in the 1980s when you had the rise of the tech industry. So remember the tech industry, semiconductors, transistors, and then lots of money to be made. So I'm working for one company, and then there's a rival company, and I decide I want to go to the rival company. But before I go, the organization said, look, before you go, we can't stop you from going, but we want you to sign an agreement so that when you leave here, the practices, the knowledge, the information that you have here, you can't take it with you. So that's a kind of legal kind of agreement. So you had, so there's a swift glimpse of NDAs. There's secrecy, confidentiality. What happens here stays here, and you don't share it elsewhere. There's an American-based company called Ironclad, and they said this: an NDA creates a legal framework to protect ideas and information from being stolen or shared with competitors or third parties. Breaking an NDA agreement triggers a host of legal ramifications, including lawsuits, financial penalties, and even criminal charges. Understood. NDAs offer a level of protection to your business so that even accidental breaches are covered. So in a sense, you can't get the understanding that, yeah, it's really important to protect your business, to protect your assets, intellectual property. We need some form of legal control, legal boundaries, so it stays within what we're doing. On one hand, it's obvious. It makes sense to protect your business and your profits and so forth. But NDAs have three main functions. And for those of you who may be watching for the first time, please, if you want to add a comment or ask a question. I was doing it on Facebook, and people were on Facebook, and it was brilliant. They closed down the site. I don't know why. They said community criteria. So somebody said I must have cheesed somebody off. Well, I don't know, because all I know that I'm doing is helping people to kind of be free and to make better choices in terms of the knowledge that I'm sharing. So they talk about, so Ironclad, American-based website, said that NDAs have three main agreements, or three functions. Identifying protected information. That's one, makes sense. Protecting sensitive information, and protecting patent rights. So that's the kind of the function of the NDA. It's really protecting your property, protecting what you have for a whole range of reasons. However, the complexities of business and so forth has changed somewhat. So the NDA somehow has become a bit more complex, understandably, and we can see what needs to take place. So NDAs can either be unilateral, which means I work for a massive organization, semiconductors and so forth. I'm going to go elsewhere. And my boss say to me, look, we know you're going. We don't want you to go. But can you sign an agreement that any information here, you're not going to take it with you? That's unilateral. But there could be a mutual NDA whereby you're leaving a company, but you have some insights and you have some knowledge which you've shared with the company. And they say to you, look, whilst you were here, you shared this information. This idea came from you. So this is the agreement. We will protect the knowledge that you have. If we use it, we will always cite you, and there'll be some commission or whatever it might be. But you're leaving this organization, go to the next one. You cannot share any information, and the secret trading stuff that we do, you can't share it with this new company that you're going to go to. However, great as it is, like most things in life, it changes, doesn't it? Lots of things start off with good intention, but given the human nature of humanity, it morphs into something else. So I just want to tell a story, just to kind of say a little bit about a friend of mine about a few years ago now. She told me how she was dismissed from her workplace. And how it was done, that she received a phone call the last working day before Christmas, and told not to come back. And on no account will she talk to anybody. And if anybody called her, her phone went to voicemail, so she couldn't talk to anybody. And it was really kind of different. However, at the start of the new year, there was a conversation with HR. There'd been some issues raised about her performance. I will tell you about that in a moment, which were never raised at her appraisal. And I've just looked at some stuff recently, and there's a big kickback now to how can you really appraise somebody once a year for 1 hour when they've been working maybe 1,500 work hours a year. So there's a kickback because people say it's not really kind of viable, but also it has a major impact on people, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So there was matters of concern about her performance and so forth, and she's made to sign an NDA. Her 15 years at the company, leading person, salesperson of the year, all went on, ended just like that. Obviously, there's a backdrop to this story, and I'll just say very briefly. Been a leading employee in the company for quite a few years, won awards and so forth, and seconded to another department. She began to excel. The person who was on the sick came back and began to make her life really, really difficult. She was then deseconded, if there's a proper term, deseconded back to her place of work, and things started to escalate with the individual that returned. And I may have shared this before, that when she was telling me what was going on, I was thinking, how long can she stay for? Because I just kind of, for me, the writing was on the wall. And you always hear it. This is the sign. We have concerns about your performance. You kind of know where it's going. You really do know where it's going. So things escalated. Management, leadership didn't handle it properly, made some mistakes. And the next thing that she knew, she was out the door. So and paid off, of course. So I've just got this little kind of equation here. Vulnerability plus ignorance of your rights plus money being bought out equals being bought out. Now, I'm going to be very careful how I say this, but there are some legal impact on NDAs. Next week, I'll be talking about how they're being improperly used, what the government is actually doing about it now, but also what you can do to claim your voice back when you're being silent. So that's next week's session. So those of you who may be experiencing moral injury, and you can see the writing on the wall, and you may be working with somebody or a friend of yours, as they're talking to you, what I've shared with you, you think, you know what, my friend might be experiencing some aspect of moral injury, and what can I do? Well, the first thing I'll tell you to do, just a little insight, tell your friend or you, the minute you start to see something, record it. Keep a journal. Don't tell anybody what you're doing. Keep a journal of what was said. Keep emails, time, dates, so forth. Record everything. And I'll say more about that next week. So this story is not unfamiliar. So you've been bought out. So gagging orders, to my mind, is a form of emotional manipulation. And maybe some legal people might be looking at me and thinking, no, Delroy, that's wrong. But the way that it's used in a way to silence people, for me, it's a form of emotional manipulation. What happens to the individual, the victim, feelings of anxiety, depression, guilt, self-blame, and this one thing that really has got to me, inadequacy. So you're good at your work, you've got prizes, you've got accolades, and you hear those words, we have concerns about your performance. That is almost like a dagger to your heart, and it sets off a whole psychological chain of negative feelings. So first step, we have concerns about your performance. And I've said, once that door is open, it rarely closes until you've gone. I hear it so often. I can almost, I'm not a betting man, but if I could bet the amount of times I hear, we've got concerns about your performance. Okay, here we go again. So when we hear that, it's not a review, it's a comment that's been unexpected, we're usually left devastated. It blows our professionalism out the water, our dedication, our confidence, our motivation is gone. We have concerns about your performance. Other emotions, we become angry, hurt, ashamed. And I think I spoke a few weeks ago on something else about shame. Shame is different from guilt. Guilt is I've done something wrong, or I shouldn't have done that. Shame is I am wrong. I am bad. I am no good. I'm unlovable. It's personalized and it's internalized and it's destructive and damaging. Another unpleasant emotion, I want to talk about this a little bit, is we become resentful, not just to the organization or the manager, but we can start to have feeling of being resentful of ourselves, self-resentful. Feeling towards resentment towards ourselves. Such feeling towards self, what it does, it hinders psychological growth and emotional freedom. You can imagine that. It's a form of self-hatred. Self-resentment is more damaging to our mental health than us resenting somebody else. Can you imagine that? When it's triggered off by, we have concerns about your performance, and then you're brought into a meeting and quite often if you're able to step back, it's minutia. It's things that could have been sorted out with a brief chat with the manager if they were so important. But they're on the warpath to kind of get you, so you're targeted. So self-resentment causes more harm to us psychologically and emotionally than us resenting somebody else. So feelings of resentment, I just want to say what that is. Feelings of resentment are feelings or expressing bitterness or indignation of having been treated unfairly. Whole thing around moral injury. We realize we've been treated unfairly. Whistleblower, you've seen a member of staff, there's an American lawyer who talks about fake investigations, where you report something as you're encouraged to do so in terms of whistleblowing, and you're told there's going to be an investigation, and then 3 or 4 weeks later you're called into a meeting, and then you realize the person who committed the offense is exonerated, and you now become the offender. You're the one who's now seen as a problem, and everything is kind of focuses on you. They call it DARVO, D-A-R-V-O. So what happens, you've made a claim, you've seen something, you've reported it, and DARVO is D-A-R-V-O. D, deny. So they deny what you're saying. A is attack. They now start to attack you. RVO, reverse victim offender. You now become the offender, and the person you've reported is now the victim. So the workplace, the leadership supports them, and they then target you. This whole thing about moral injury is, well, I was going to use a word, but I won't. It's not good. What happens when you hear those words, we've got some concerns about your performance, is this. Your brain is affected by that comment. Negative comments about your performance. So there's negative comments, cynical thoughts, there's denial about your professionalism, and what that does, that creates neural pathways in your brain to sadness. And what concerns about your performance evokes is fight or flight. You become scared because now you're being criticized. You were professional, you've got high standards, and now you're being told we have some concerns about your performance. Now, of course, if you go through a bad patch, or sometimes we don't, things might be happening at home, this is not that. This is a way to begin to break you because you've affected a part of the organization. I think it was Thomas Merton who spoke. I used a quote some time ago. He said that when you criticize the organization, what they hear is that they hear you're criticizing them. And the reason why they feel that way is that they bought into the organization hook, line, and sinker. He doesn't say it like that. He says it more succinctly, but that's basically what it is. So what happens then When we hear those words, people talk about gaslighting, and then we lack confidence and we feel inadequate and so forth. What happens? It causes our brain to distort the truth, and making a comeback is really, really difficult, because it's not just we have concerns about your performance, then there's a whole kind of trail of stuff, and you're got at and you're being attacked. So I just want to kind of say very briefly, how then do you recover from self-resentment? It could be that you're out of the organization now, and you might say, well, Delroy, this has come a bit too late. One thing I'll say is this. It is really difficult to heal and recover and to be restored in an organization that wrecked you in the first place. It really is kind of difficult. I know people have stayed in organizations, they've taken the place to the workplace to tribunal, they've won and they've remained, but they're forever looking over their shoulder. They're working in an environment which is not good. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and he was saying to me that in where he's working, so many people are putting on the front, keeping their head down just to get through each single day. And I said to him, that is unsustainable. We can't continue working in that if we're putting on the front, putting the best outside, keeping our head down just to remain in the workplace. At some point, we're going to give, and quite often it's us, it's not the system. So recovering from self-resentment, so one of the things, of course, is to document your thoughts to find the roots of the self-resentment. And sometimes what happens, if there's emotional overwhelm, sometimes we don't know where it's coming from. But what can happen if we're able to step back? Sometimes it's some earlier stuff of our own, but sometimes it has its roots in the organization and in the way in which you were treated. And once you're able to localize where the resentment is from, or the roots of it, it really helps you to kind of help on with recovery, because we're really talking about an aspect of recovery. So document your thoughts to find the roots of self-resentment. Self-kindness or self-compassion. Remember, I spoke about that a few weeks ago. Self-compassion is really, really important. What do I mean by that? Simply this. If you have a friend who is going through the thing that you're going through, how would you speak to them? Because what happens sometimes when there's emotional overwhelm and we're really going down this dark spiral, we talk to ourselves really harshly and we treat ourselves really badly. Of course, when there's emotional overwhelm, some people do drugs and illicit relationships and excessive alcohol and stuff they won't normally do, they find themselves doing. But if a friend of yours was going through what you were going through, how would you talk to them? I think, I can't remember the name of the psychologist now. She says, most of us would agree if we spoke to our friend the way that we speak to ourselves, we would have no friends left. So this whole thing about self-compassion, when you're feeling raw, bruised, got at, inadequate, angry, wrathful, resentful, what you need at that time is not further bricks on you, but you need something that's going to be soothing and compassionate, that's going to help you get through this particular kind of situation. So self-compassion is really important, but also surround yourself with people who love you. One of the things I say with some of my friends when I text them, for the maybe we've had a week and then I kind of contact them, and I say something like this, even with emails as well. And I'll say this to you as well, because I don't know what you're going through. So look, weekend's coming up. I said, I wish you the best of the weekend. I hope that you're in the company of people who love you. And sometimes I go a bit further. Have a great weekend. All you need for a great weekend: good food, good company, a little change in your pocket, contentment. What more can you ask for? Those simple things are really helpful. But also, if you're experiencing self-resentment, being in the company of people who love you, it's really, really important. It helps you to recover as best as you can. So let me just wait for a moment to see if there's any comments on. No, there's nothing on Facebook. I don't know what's going on with it. It's meant to be happening anyway. But anyway, let's continue. So document your thoughts. Find out where the root of this is. Self-compassion. Surround yourself with people who love you and care for you. And I don't mean necessarily yes people who, you know, they've got your back. Also, meditation is really good. Just kind of slowing down your breathing, your thoughts, really helpful in terms of recovery. Also, sometimes for some people, if it's too much, they really are kind of discombobulated, I would say go and see a therapist. Make the investment. Helps. Find someone, a professional person. Sometimes people, you know, people have come to me over the years as a therapist and say, you know, Delroy, I've got friends, I've got family, but I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to burden them with the stuff. I want to talk to somebody who's totally independent from my family. And some people do that. And that's how you function. But also I said, learn to talk positively to yourself. Absolutely important. Certainly if you're going to go start something new, do something different, positive self-talk is really, really important. So let me just get back. Okay. So in terms of self-protection, one of the things you can do in the British context, we have something called ACAS. ACAS is the Advisory Conciliation and Arbitrary Service, a government-funded organization where you can get independent knowledge, information for the work situation. So they work with millions of employers and employees every year because they want to improve workplace situations. They know what workplace environments can be like. And so it's an independent public body. It's called ACAS, ACAS.com. If you put that in, and certainly in Britain, they've got a whole raft of stuff. They've got training as well. And so it's really important that you kind of get a hold of that. They will tell you the proper use of NDAs. So they give a whole list of stuff, and I'll just name one or two. An employer might use an NDA to stop an employee or worker shared information. We've spoken about that already. When somebody starts a new job, sometimes I remember when I started British Telecom, I had to sign an Official Secrets Act that anything that happened as I worked there would not be shared elsewhere. NDAs can be used an employer or employee, or there might be a dispute and there's a settlement, and then it can be used that way. But the thing that I'm really talking about is how NDAs are used to silence people as a gagging order, and that's the thing that I'll be talking about next week with more detail. So as we come to the conclusion, we've looked at NDAs, how they're used, how they should be used. There was a story of somebody who was on the end of the gagging order, and also what happens, the telltale sign. We have concerns about your performance. You kind of know where it's going after that, and quite often there's no offer of training, any kind of rehabilitation, another course, extra supervision, more evaluation. It's really a doorway to get you out of the organization. So anyway, more to be said next week. I'll be focusing on how they use, as I said before, and what we can do to, if we're faced with a gagging order, what we can do, and their misuse can happen. So don't be fooled. I said last week, I think it was, you might be in an organization and you might think it might not happen to you, but all you need to do is to say something that ruffles the feathers for the powers that be, and you will see how quickly the tide changes towards you. So don't be fooled. And also, if you're in an organization and you've seen other people treated badly, NDAs, all that type of thing, do not be naive to think it can't happen to you, because it can. Forewarned is forearmed. My name is Delroy Hall. I'm the CEO of Del West Consultancy, and I work with individuals and organizations. And I have said before that I'm wanting to start an online support community for people who've experienced NDA. If you're interested, please let me know. I've got 4 people, I think, so far. I want to go to about 10, 12 people. We'll meet up short term, maybe 10 weeks. And one of the great things about people have experienced moral injury or been mistreated at work, you don't need to explain yourself, but it's a space where you can express what you're going through without feeling judged. So there's my website, delwest.com, or you can email me at delroy@delwest.com, or you can contact me on LinkedIn privately, as some of you have done. I just want to say thank you for some of the stories that you've shared. Some of them are horrendous, what you're going through. And I'm just surprised that organizations are allowed to get away with some of the abusive behavior that they continue to seem to get away with. But certainly they do with this whole thing around gagging orders. But I'll share a little bit more next week what certainly the government in Britain are doing about gagging orders. They kind of know how they're being used, and they're being used not in a correct way. There's legislation, but certainly they're looking at what they're going to do to kind of cull it, and it needs culling as well. So my name is Delroy Hall. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Please, if you found anything here helpful, please share it wide and far. And certainly I just started this off, folks, in the UK, but now, and this is not to brag, but to say people in South Africa, Australia, Canada, America, Ireland, Indonesia, Malaysia, other parts of the world are kind of tuning to this, because this thing about moral injury, it is global. And if it's systemic, there's very little we can do, but we can do a lot to protect ourselves. And maybe as workers, to get together, you can do quite a lot. So go well, enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week, and I'll see you next week at 7 o'clock. So please message me during the week, as many as you have done, and I'll try my best to respond. I think I'm pretty good at that. And during the week, I'll send out a newsletter, maybe by Friday, and really just have a read of the newsletter. And then the Tuesday night is a deep dive into what I'll be sharing. All right, go well, take care, all the best, bye-bye.